On the night of October 31st, 2017, when police in Japan knocked on the door to a local apartment, they were hoping to find a young woman who had recently gone missing. Instead, they were greeted by a grisly crime scene. When they went inside and looked around, the police found hundreds of cut-up body parts, including human heads, inside several freezers in what the media could only describe as a house of horrors. At the center of it all was a young, unemployed man who preyed on some of the most vulnerable members of society, quickly turning into one of Japan's most prolific serial killers. And when he was finally sentenced, the judge said he had no choice but to sentence him to death. This is the story of Takahiro Shiraishi, or as he's more popularly known, the Twitter Killer. Let's rewind a bit to 8 days earlier. On October 23, 2017, a 23-year-old woman living in Hachioji, Japan, went for a walk and never came back. Her name was Aiko Tamura, and she was staying at a group home where residents could receive psychiatric care. As it so happens, Aiko was suicidal. She wasn't alone, as Japan has one of the highest suicide rates in the developed world, and it has for a while. Though the people living at the facility may have been vulnerable, they could come and go as they pleased without anyone asking any questions, and it was on one such occasion that Aiko left without anyone asking or knowing why. After she left her group home, Aiko made her way to JR Hachioji train station, and then from there went to Sobu Dai Maya Station in the nearby city of Zama. Security cameras at both train stations captured Aiko walking away with an unknown man, the last time she was ever seen. Aiko's disappearance was the latest in a series of seemingly unrelated disappearances. Just 2 months earlier, on August 21st, a 21-year-old woman from Kanagawa Prefecture went missing after she left a note to her family saying that she'd be back, and other girls and women quickly followed. In all the chaos, a 20-year-old man also managed to disappear. Each victim came from a different city, spread out across multiple prefectures, all of which were in the Greater Tokyo area. The Greater Tokyo area is a spiraling metropolitan centered on Tokyo that includes several nearby towns, cities, and prefectures, which are basically the Japanese equivalent to states. In all, more than 38 million people call the area home, meaning 9 disappearances could easily slip under the radar. And the fact that they all happened across multiple jurisdictions likely helped put the disappearances beyond notice. In other words, even as the disappearances started piling up, no one could have imagined that they were all connected. That is, until Aiko's brother made an unsettling discovery. Though Aiko left her group home on October 23rd, her family had lost contact with her days prior, so by the time she disappeared, her brother was already looking for her. Part of his search included looking through her Twitter account to see if she had posted anything that might help find her. One post in particular, dated September 20th, must have made his heart stop. In it, Aiko wrote, "I want to die, but doing so alone is terrible. I'm looking for someone to die with me." At that point, Aiko's brother used her password to log into her Twitter account and read her messages, and there he found a conversation with Hanging Pro, also called the Hangman. Hanging Pro was the alias that Aiko's killer used online to find victims. He made several Twitter accounts such as this one where he advertised his knowledge on hanging, saying that he wanted to spread knowledge about hanging and be a help to those who were truly suffering. This help included making suicide pacts with young women such as Aiko, whom he messaged. As part of his method, whenever Hanging Pro was luring in a victim, he would discourage them from telling their family about their plans to commit suicide, saying that it was selfish to do so. In reality, he just didn't want their families to talk them out of it. Aiko's brother went to the police station the next day to report the messages and get help finding his sister. In addition, he posted on Twitter seeking more information about Hanging Pro, and miraculously, a woman called Yumi said that she had talked with him before. Yumi would end up being instrumental in finally catching the serial killer. Yumi and the police worked together to set a trap for the hangman and catch him dead to rights. Since they needed to know where he lived, they had Yumi set up a meeting where they would walk back to his place just like Aiko did. Of course, the hangman agreed, and on the night of October 31st, he showed up at Sobu Daime Station, expecting to get yet another kill. However, Yumi didn't show up, and no doubt disappointed, the hangman turned around and began his walk home, not knowing that 2 officers were following him every step of the way. Unaware that he was being followed, the hangman led police to his apartment in Zama, which was about 670 meters away from the train station, or 2/5 of a mile. He went inside and shut the door, only to hear a knock shortly after. When he opened the door, the killer was greeted by the officers who had just one question: where is she? Surprisingly, the hangman didn't put up any resistance. He simply pointed to the cooler behind him and said, "She's in there." Sure enough, inside the cooler, wrapped in a bag, was Aiko's head. When they searched the rest of the apartment, police found more heads, 9 in total, and more than 240 bone fragments and other coolers and storage boxes. Some of them had been covered in cat litter to try to keep the smell down, but it didn't work, as several of the hangman's neighbors would go on to say that they smelled foul odors coming from his home quite often, and that he even used ventilation fans to blow the smell away. Alongside the bodies, police found a hatchet, a saw, some blood-stained knives, plastic bands, and several nylon ropes in the apartment. The ropes had been used to strangle his victims, hence his name, but although he had 9 victims, there were 10 ropes in total, one of which was unused, meaning he was planning on getting his 10th kill. Maybe Yumi, or maybe someone else. Following the gruesome discovery, the hangman was placed under arrest and he confessed to his crimes pretty easily. He told cops all about how he would lure in young women and girls and then beat, rob, rape, and hang them and dismember their bodies before throwing their clothes and personal items in the recycling bin. According to the killer, the first body took 3 days to cut up, but after that he could finish a body in less than a day. He kept the cut up bodies inside the apartment because he was scared that someone would see him disposing of them. In all, the hangman had 9 victims, 8 female and 1 male. His youngest victim was a local high schooler, just 15 years old, and his oldest victim was 26. All of this happened in just 2 short months. Due to their condition, police needed to use GPS data, DNA from relatives, and more to positively identify all 9 of the hangman's victims. His first victim, Mizuki Miura, wasn't necessarily suicidal. She just wanted a new life, a way to escape everything and start over. The hangman, who was unemployed, convinced her to give him 500,000 yen, or more than $4,000 in cash, saying that he would use it to rent a room where they could live together. Once he got the cash, he rented his apartment in Zama on August 22nd, and very shortly thereafter invited Miura over, beginning his frenzied murder spree. Though the hangman first got in touch with Miura through Twitter, they actually met in person prior to her murder. She and her boyfriend both had dinner with him. After she disappeared, Miura's boyfriend, Shogo Nishinaka, showed up to the killer's apartment looking for her on August 29th. Afraid that he would go to the police, the hangman killed Shogo and cut his body up, Shogo becoming his sole male victim. He was likely the 3rd victim overall, as 15-year-old Kureya Ishihara disappeared one day before him, on August 28th. Following Shogo's death came 6 more disappearances, including 2 more high school students, culminating in Aiko's disappearance. According to the hangman, he killed all of his victims the day he met them. So who was the hanging pro? After his arrest, the killings became front-page news and the killer's real name, Takehiro Shiraishi, was revealed. Little by little, more and more information started coming out about the hangman's upbringing and his life before he adopted that devilish persona. Takehiro was born in Machida, Japan on October 9, 1990, one of Tokyo's many suburbs. He grew up in the nearby city of Zama, which is a little over 20 miles southwest of Tokyo City. It was there that he went to school, graduating from high school in 2009. In interviews for local newspapers, his classmates remarked that he was no extraordinary student, but that he was diligent and that more than anything, he was a good listener. In particular, he liked to listen to people talk about the problems they were facing. This lines up with how many of his neighbors from Zama described him. Growing up, they said, Takehiro was a sweet, kind young boy, and in his adult life, he often visited his father, who lived alone. Even an ex-girlfriend of his was shocked at the news, saying that he wasn't the type to hurt women. On the other hand, some of Takehiro's other neighbors held him in low regard. While he was in elementary school, Takehiro and his friends apparently liked to play the choking game, a game where they took turns choking one another, and Takehiro would pass out pretty regularly while playing it. Looking back, it seems like a disturbing foreshadow of what was to come. After he graduated in 2009, Takehiro went on to work at a few different jobs, a meat factory, a slot machine arcade, and finally, a job at a local supermarket. He quit working at the supermarket about 2 years later in July of 2011 and soon began his first foray into crime. But it wasn't murder, it was prostitution. Prostitution, while technically illegal, is a thriving industry in Japan, generating billions of dollars per year. Most of the country's prostitution takes place in the so-called red light districts, areas inside the cities where criminal enterprises are known to operate. The largest of these is Kabukicho, a suburb of Tokyo filled to the brim with yakuza, sex clubs, and more. After he quit his job at the supermarket, Takehiro went on to work as a scout in Kabukicho, finding young girls to join the trade. He became well known as a creep in the local community, with even another scout posting his picture online and telling people to watch out for him. Needless to say, his time as a scout didn't last forever, as Takahiro was eventually arrested for recruiting a young woman for a sex shop in the full knowledge that she would be pressed into prostitution. The charge wasn't too serious, however, and Takahiro got off with a suspended jail sentence early in 2017. After his arrest, Takahiro moved back to Zama, renting an apartment in late August where he wasted no time beginning his killing spree. Before his spree, he had a disturbing conversation with his father, saying that he didn't know why he was alive and that he felt like his life had no meaning. Some people in the neighborhood thought that Takahiro was a bit creepy. As one neighbor put it, he liked to stand outside at night dressed in black, staring at his phone, but no one could have imagined just how deranged he truly was. During the trial, Takahiro's lawyers tried to argue that since the girls were suicidal, Takahiro killed them with consent, meaning that he shouldn't be found guilty of the most serious crime, or at the very least, should be spared from the death penalty. Surprisingly, Takahiro himself refuted this, telling the court that he killed his victims without their consent, explaining that the girls did not want to die and that he killed them to satisfy his own desires. He pled guilty to 9 murders and refused to appeal the case, and he even withdrew an appeal his lawyers had filed on his behalf. As a result, Takahiro was sentenced to death in December of 2020, a sentence that was finalized the following month. He was executed this year on June 27, 2025. Though some people in human rights groups opposed the sentence, the judge who sentenced him called his spree a deeply serious incident that caused a great shock and anxiety across society, and said that Shiraishi trampled upon his victim's dignity, highlighting that the crimes were done for his own sexual and financial desires. The Tokyo District Court said that he ambushed his victims and called his crimes nothing short of devious and despicable. As a result, the court said the death penalty was unavoidable. One victim's father expressed his own regret at the sentence, saying that he would have preferred for Takahiro to live and reflect on his actions instead of dying. In the aftermath of Takehiro's arrest and exposure, Japan cracked down on Twitter and other websites where suicide was discussed in a positive light, and Twitter itself instituted policies to prevent further needless deaths. Twitter was and still is one of the most popular social media sites in Japan. It's interesting to note that this wasn't the first time a killer in Japan used the internet to find suicidal victims. Before him, a killer named Hiroshi used similar tactics to take the lives of 3 victims, all from an online suicide club, all offered suicide pacts, and all strangled to death. He was sentenced to death for his crimes in 2007 and, like Shiraishi, retracted his appeal, saying that he would accept the punishment to pay for his crimes. Hiroshi was executed in 2009. Takahiro's 9 kills in 2 months make him one of the most prolific serial killers the world has ever seen. Even Ted Bundy didn't rack up bodies that fast. Had he not been caught, there would have surely been more victims to come. In fact, a few different women came close to being his 10th victim. One woman, who had talked to Shiraishi on the phone, recalled hearing a woman groaning in the background while he explained her options to her. In her words, he offered to give her a drugged drink and then hang her, or to hang her from behind while she was watching TV. Seeing how the other women ended up, she was shaken and said she was glad she didn't go. Another woman, who worked as a hostess in a local hostess bar, said that one night Takahiro asked her to go back to his apartment with him. Her company declined, perhaps sensing that something was off about him. Needless to say, when she found out exactly what happened at his apartment, she was grateful they said no. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to see future uploads. Until next time, thank you.